Grandpa Dennis is turning.
I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. Doesn't matter if my beard is gray. Just listen, I have something to say.
Grandpa Dennis is turning.
I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. And this old goat has something to say. So just keep learning, for Grandpa Dennis is turning. Hello, I'm Dennis Pervensky, and welcome to Grandpa Dennis's Woodturning Studio. In today's video, I have a gorgeous burl. It's a piece of birch bird's eye. Very rare, very nice. I put it into a pot and filled it with resin. We'll see how that turns out. But first, I got something to say. Woodturners are always striving to try and do something just a little bit different, something unique. Although this particular project isn't all that unique, the piece of wood is quite unique. I hope it's going to turn out great. This is where I think people should always be pushing the limits. They should always be striving more and more to do different things, or to do the same thing but better. This is solid bird's eye, and it's birch. Birch from northern Manitoba / Saskatchewan in Canada. It's quite a rare piece. Very, very detailed bird's eye. I predict that it goes right through the entire solid piece. This is going to be really cool. Now to find the center. This measurement was taken from the pail I'll use, and it can nicely incorporate all of the bird's eye. However, the pail bottom is smaller than the top. So, if I turn the piece to fit the bottom so that I can put the piece right through to the bottom, I will have quite the gap near the top of it. So I'm going to tilt my bandsaw blade so that the bottom has a smaller diameter than the top, and I'll use the same angle. I've measured the angle in here, and that's going to be the angle that I'll put my bandsaw blade at. So the bandsaw table will be slightly tilted to incorporate that angle. It's not going to be a great difference, but it'll save a few bucks on resin. At least that's the plan. Let's see if that really does happen. It's not going to take very much. Yeah, that's what usually happens. There, that should do her. This should be a lot easier with a circle jig, but I don't want to spend the time or energy right now to make one. This is going to be freehand. And I'm just moving it to ensure that I pick up the majority of the burl. Well, here goes the risk. I think I'm going to leave it at this. I can't get this stuff off. I know there's bark there, but it's on so solid. And this piece, it's going to be 25 or 30 years since it was cut. Sitting in a dry shed. I think it's worth the risk. So that's what I'll do. I'll leave it like this and just put the resin in. This is the finished blank that came out of the pail. This was done a little bit different. I didn't use the vacuum chamber and I didn't use a pressure pot. I put it into a pail and just left it. So, there are a few bubbles up at the top. It's understandable. I don't know what's going to be on the inside. But whatever's in there, we'll deal with it. The coloring I used is a dark metal gray. It looks like there's swirls throughout it. I hope that stays in there. That is really quite nice. So, we'll see what happens with it. It's not all that high, so I'm not sure how many corings I can get out of this. But the next step is to find the centers, put it on the lathe, and let's see what happens. This block of wood was put onto the burl that's inside the resin, and then I taped it down onto the sides of the pail. And that was to keep the burled block from floating in the resin. I wanted it to stay down. This will most likely be the bottom. Well, how about that? I managed to do that without injuring myself. That's a plus. You can buy these plexiglass plates on Amazon, and they've got circles outlined in them with a center point. However, I think the largest I saw was 12 inches. I wanted something a little bigger. So I went to my local glass company, and they have this plexiglass. They gave me a sheet. I think this is 14 inches in diameter. I put it on the lathe, got the center, trued it up, and then scored every inch on it. So now I've got the same kind you can get from Amazon, but much bigger. I have a glue block attached to my faceplate, and I'm truing up the face of it so that it's perfectly flat. Then I'll put the blank between centers and true up the bottom of it so that it's also perfectly flat, and that allows me to seat the waste block properly onto the blank. I have a special adapter to attach my faceplate to the tailstock, and that allows for a better alignment when I glue on the waste block to the bottom of the blank. The waste block was glued onto the bottom of the blank using 2-hour epoxy. Although it says 2 hours, I usually wait overnight for it to cure. Now that the blank is attached to the headstock, I can true up the side of the blank. As well, I'll true up the top of the blank in preparation for coring. I'm hoping to get 3 pieces out of the one blank. The one-way coring system is now set up on the lathe, and I'll begin the process of coring out one of the bowls from the blank. The first one to be cored out is the smallest bowl. This process cannot be rushed. It takes time, and I have to back out the cutter regularly to clean out the shavings. On my system in particular, I have a replacement cutter. This cutting tip is made of carbide, and it's replaceable. It does a marvelous job on resin and very difficult burl. As you see, the small bowl flies out of the blank and tumbles onto the floor. This is a problem when using this coring system. The solution is to bring the tailstock up and provide support to the piece that you're trying to core. However, the knife system gets in the way of the tailstock's live center, so it cannot provide support to the piece. My solution is to make a rod that fits onto the live center and is much thinner so that it can fit properly and provide the support that's needed. This is a small bowl. It's approximately 4 inches in diameter. However, it does have a nice purpose. It can hold small items. As well, it complements the other 2 bowls in the nesting set. I'm now repositioning the cutter so that I can core out the middle-sized bowl out of the blank. The bowl is now held onto the blank by a very small piece. I use a crowbar to get in and pry it loose. Now I'm positioning the cutter to make the final cut in the largest bowl. Using the coring system to make this cut accomplishes two things for me. It saves time in turning down all of the waste that is at the bottom of this particular bowl, and it also ensures that I get the same shape for the large bowl as the other two. I'm now using a scraper to smooth out all the little imperfections that the gouge had made in turning the bowl. Not sure you can pick this up on the camera, but the bark is coming away from the piece all in here. I'm going to put some CA glue in there, and I might fill it with some colored epoxy as well, but the CA glue will hold it in place. I'm trying to keep the CA glue from soaking into the wood part because it does stain it. I'm going to just fill some of the voids with UV resin, clear, not stained. This resin is rather thick, so it's not flowing into the cracks very well. So I'm just using a scrap paper to push it in, and then the UV light cures it. Well, I think that's got it. The UV resin that I'm using here is called Solarez, S-O-L-A-R-E-Z. It's formulated for fly fishermen who tie their own flies. I'm also using a specialized flashlight that gives off UV light to cure the resin. You can also get the UV resin from Designer Epoxy, and they've got a special UV light for this purpose as well. The beauty of this UV resin is you can put it in small amounts and hit the light for 15 seconds and it's cured. Then you can keep on going with your project. Once the final shaping is completed, I go on to the sanding process. If the piece is still relatively rough, I'll start sanding at 40 or 60 grit. However, if the piece is smooth, I'll go up in size at the beginning of the sanding process. If there's resin on the bowl, I'll sand all the way up to 1500 grit. If it's all wood, I'll sand up to 400 grit. I'm going to do a final cleaning with methyl hydrate, and this will get rid of most of the dust. And then I'm going to buff it with my buffing wheel. And I'm using the white diamond compound, and you can get this from the Beal company. There, that's ready for a finish. Now I'll just do the inside and get it to a nice thickness. Now it's time to put the finish on the inside of the large bowl. The product I'm using is a homemade finish consisting of 1/3 boiled linseed oil, 1/3 polyurethane, and 1/3 pure tung oil. I saturate the piece until the wood will not absorb any more of the oil. After about 10 or 15 minutes, I will then rub off as much of the finish as I can and set the bowl aside to dry overnight. The next day, I will repeat the process. To get the shine and the depth I'm looking for, I may have to do this 3 or 4 times. I've mounted the medium-sized bowl in my chuck and brought the tailstock up for support. Now I'm truing up the bottom of this piece in preparation for a glue block. The glue block has cured overnight, and now I'm truing up the inside of the medium-sized bowl. It's now time to work on the smallest bowl. The process is slightly different. The red piece you see that's on the lathe is actually a vacuum chuck. I have a vacuum pump that draws vacuum through the headstock of the lathe and through that red chuck. It then holds the piece onto that chuck using vacuum, and I can true up the bottom in preparation for the final turning. In this case, I turned a small tendon on the bottom of the bowl and put it into the jaws of my normal chuck. I was then able to complete the piece in the same manner as I did the other two. When I'm putting the final coats of finish on the bowls, I like to do that while it's spinning on the lathe. That process produces a little bit of heat which helps the finish to set and cure. In order to hold the bowls onto the lathe, I often use my vacuum chuck. Well, the nesting set of 3 bowls are finally finished. I want to go over some of the details with respect to nesting bowls. As the term implies, it's really having a series of bowls come out of the same bowl blank. In my opinion, there are some things that are really important with respect to nesting bowls. When you look at a completed bowl, the very first thing you notice is the shape. When the shape is correct and looks good, that brings you to take a closer look at the bowl. So the first thing you would notice with a set of nesting bowls is the shape of the bowl the same for all 3. The next thing you notice is the number of nesting bowls. If you had only 2, this doesn't really look good. If you had If you have 4, that doesn't look good either. 3 is a nice set. It just flows properly. Perhaps even 5, but not an even number of 2 or 4. The next thing is you have to have the bowls flow. In other words, you have to have something that tells you that this small bowl came from this one and this bowl came from that one. Most of the time, it's the wood itself, the pattern, the color, the type, and that gives you the indication that they've come from the same bowl blank. So it's important to have something in the set that blends together and shows that they've come from each other. In this particular case, it's the epoxy resin that's on the side and the top of the bowl. They're all the same. In addition, the bird's eye birch is also the same. And when you look at them carefully, you can see that the shape of the wood inside the bowl is the same. This piece came from the inside of that bowl. And that piece came from the inside of this bowl. I think this set of nesting bowls is right on the mark. Now I got something to say. Trust your instincts. I don't have any formal training in art or in design. However, I've seen enough designs I've done enough bowls, and I've done enough turning that I can tell from my intuition what a nice shape is. Trust your instincts with regards to that. And if you're a little short on your instincts, take a look at nature and see what's happening there. There's no straight edges in nature. It's all flowing forms. If you look at something and it doesn't quite look right, it probably isn't right. So trust your instincts, not just on bowls and wood turning, but also in life. Remember, your instincts are usually correct, and they can save you a lot of trouble later on. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you like this nesting set. Give me a comment on what you think. I'd appreciate that. As well, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell. That'll give you some advance notice on my upcoming videos. Take a look at Grandpa Dennis's wood turning in YouTube and see the other dozen or so videos that I've already done. Until the next time, keep turning.
Grandpa Dennis is turning.
I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. Doesn't matter if my beard is gray. Just listen, I have something to
Grandpa
say.
Dennis is turning.
I'm alright, 'cause I'm okay. And this old goat has something to say. So just keep learning, for Grandpa Dennis is turning.